Okay, Subhan. So let's start it. Okay. Just give me a minute. Let me share this. Okay, Subhan. So let's start it. Okay, you are here, right? So today we will be talking about basically Gandhi, political thoughts of Gandhi. Right. So so far, when we were talking about everything, basically yesterday we discussed about कि Indian philosophy, इंडियन पॉलिटिकल फिलोसफी में और वेस्टर्न पॉलिटिकल फिलोसफी में डिफरेंसेस क्या क्या हैं, राइट? हमने ये बेसिक आउटलाइन डिस्कस किया हुआ था. टुडे बेसिकली हमने डिस्कस किया था हुआ था शांति पर्व, महात्मा वो जो महाभारत से हमने उठाया था लास्ट शांति पर्व, और फिर मनुस्मृति का थोड़ा बहुत देखा था. अर्थशास्त्र हम देखेंगे. ओके. और बेसिकली वी आर स्टार्टिंग विद महात्मा गांधी, राइट? तो व्हेन वी टॉक अबाउट महात्मा गांधी, बेसिकली उनकी जो लाइफ है उसके बारे में जानना थोड़ा इंपॉर्टेंट हो जाता है. ओके. नाउ अगर हम महात्मा गांधी को देखें, ओके, व्हेन वी लुक एट हिज कंप्लीट लाइफ, what we will understand is he few people claim that he was a saint. Okay, as you must have read it in NCERT. हमने क्या देखा था कि there are certain quotes when you read themes in history, basically modern India part. Okay, you will find out कि उसमें एक जगह है जहाँ पर कुछ आर्टिकल्स कोट किए हुए हैं, और गांधी जी का जो ऑरा था, या फिर कह सकते हैं कि गांधी जी की जो पर्सनालिटी थी वो कुछ ऐसी थी कि एक किसान अपने खेत में कुछ बीज रोपता है, लेट्स से कि वो धान है, लेकिन वो सपने में देखता है कि उसका जो धान है वो कोई और पौधा दे रहा है, राइट? और फिर देखता है कि गांधी जी आके बोले हैं और उसको वो उसके लिए वो रियलिटी हो जाती है, राइट? सो वी हैव टॉक्ड अबाउट इट. Another thing that we need to understand is कि ultimately गांधी जी was considered as a saint, okay, by many, और इसीलिए उनके नाम के साथ महात्मा टर्म लग गया है. लेकिन इट साउंड्स क्वाइट कॉन्ट्ररी कि एक सेंट पॉलिटिकल एक्टिविटी में इन्वॉल्व है, राइट? क्योंकि पॉलिटिकल एक्टिविटी विच इज समथिंग विच इज स्पिरिचुअल, और जो सेंट का ऑरा है वो एक साथ नहीं चलते हैं. बिकॉज पॉलिटिक्स ऑफन, जब हम पॉलिटिक्स की बात करते हैं तो बेसिकली हमारे माइंड में क्या आता है कि जो चीजें हैं वो somehow messy हैं. ओके, पॉलिटिक्स इज नॉट अ गुड थिंग. ओके, माइंड में यही आता है. ओके, एंड इट्स यूजुअली कंसिडर्ड art which involves a lot of dirt. Okay, so when we talk about Mahatma Gandhi, still दोनों चीजें हैं. He is an active politician. Without him, maybe कि जो इंडिया का इंडिपेंडेंस है उसका का पूरा स्ट्रक्चर ही डिफरेंट होता. So he is an active politician, not only in India. Rather, if you will look at, he is also one of the key figures in South African independence struggle, right? And similarly, you will see that even Nelson Mandela considers Gandhi his guru, or let's say he uses the same although there are certain differences between the methods used by Nelson Mandela and Gandhi. Now, this is something that we need to have in mind, क्योंकि जब तक हम
Sir,
नॉन
I
वायलेंस के बारे
think,
में,
sir, I
yeah,
think we lost connection when you started speaking about Nelson Mandela.
okay. So basically, what we were trying to say is कि नेल्सन मंडेला और महात्मा गांधी दोनों एक ही तरीके से काम कर रहे हैं. दोनों का जो बैकड्रॉप है, दोनों नॉन वायलेंट हैं. ओके, तो समहाउ नेल्सन मंडेला की जो आइडियोलॉजी वो इंस्पायर्ड है गांधी से. तो इन दिस वे गांधी केवल और केवल इंडिया के ग्रेट पॉलिटिकल फिगर नहीं है, रादर ही इज अ ग्रेट पॉलिटिकल फिगर थ्रू आउट द ग्लोब, राइट? देयर आर सेवरल प्लेसेस अराउंड द अर्थ जहाँ पर वी हैव गांधी स्क्वायर. ओके, जैसे ऑलमोस्ट इंडिया में हर बिग सिटी में एक गांधी चौक है. Similarly, it is not only in India, rather in different countries also. Let's say you have certain streets named after Gandhi throughout the globe. certain squares named after Gandhi throughout the globe. With this, what I'm trying to say is he is a very, very big political figure, right? Now, why I have used the term sui generis? Okay, it simply means कि it is indicating कि महात्मा गांधी के जैसा दूसरा कोई नहीं हुआ, या फिर let's say he was not inspired by somebody else. Rather, he was a new kind of development, or let's say he was a new kind of generation. He was, let's say, um, ना उनके जैसा पहले कभी कोई हुआ और most probably ना आगे कोई होगा. So this is what I mean by he is basically sui generis. So what we are seeing is he is balancing both the things. So he is claiming to be a saint, and then he is claiming to be a politician also. Now therefore this is quite a fascinating combination. However, when we look at Gandhi's thought, what are the basic ideas of Gandhi? First, we will have a look on them. So, basic ideas of Gandhi involve individual liberty. Okay. Now, individual liberty is quite a vague term. However, it is bound, because when you say individual liberty, okay, individual liberty again can mean anything. कि मेरे मन में जो है वो मैं कर लूँ, ऐसा लेकिन नहीं है. गांधी जी के जो liberty, it is having certain boundaries, and it is always dictated by the terms of truth and self-realization. Again, we will try to understand कि गांधी जी के लिए truth क्या है और self-realization क्या है. But what I'm trying to insist is, although he is in favor of individual liberty for each and everyone, but still he is saying that such a liberty is bound by truth and self-realization. Similarly, we will see that Gandhi was against modernization. So basically, he is against industrialization, materialism, and several kind of self-pursuits. So whenever we encounter where there is a rush after material gains in the society, he is basically against them. Okay, he is what he is essentially seeking is that everything should be balanced. Okay, so what is the way out, or what was Gandhi's tool, okay, to counter modernization, or let's say the rapid industrialization? So the basic tool that Gandhiji used against industrialization and materialism was basically the use of Swadeshi. Okay. Now again, use of Swadeshi is a broad concept, and it involves use of Swadeshi just also for two kind of things, for self and for trusteeship. So you will see that Swadeshi will do two things. Okay, it will empower each and every individual, and at the same time, it will give back the power that was basically snatched away in this era, during the British era. Okay, by the Britishers. So it will transfer back this power which was snatched by the Britishers to the local people. So basically, it will provide trusteeship of the economic activities, trusteeship of the political activities, and social activities back to the Indians. So that was the concept of Swadeshi. It was not only using the Swadeshi goods, rather it was transfer of power also. Similarly, when we move out to see political practices, then we see that he is talking about self-mobilization and non-violence. Again, we will look at these terms in detail, but let me outline it. What is self-mobilization? So Gandhiji is not urging anyone that you should pursue me. Rather, he is saying that if you are convinced with me, you will automatically join the movement. And therefore, what is the key feature of Gandhi's attempts or Gandhi's philosophy is that he is open for each and everyone, right? He is giving tools for even those sections of the society who are marginalized. Therefore, we see that after Gandhi's return from South Africa to India, the political movement in India suddenly gains momentum, and not only the, let's say, the upper class is participating now, which was the case initially, because when you will see most of the freedom fighters prior to Gandhi were those who were lawyers, who were businessmen, and therefore they had their agenda. Okay, so let's keep that aside. We will talk about that in history lessons. But right now, what I'm essentially trying to say is that onset of Gandhi's journey in India, or let's say Gandhi's attempt in struggle for independence, led to a very major development, and it was this, that even women and all the sections of the society joined the movement, and therefore Gandhiji made this attempt, or let's say the freedom struggle, into a mass mobilization movement, right? And therefore, we will see that after arrival of Gandhi, there is suddenly rapid participation of students, rapid participation of women, and almost all the sectors of the society. Now, this is something which is quite unique because to be a great politician, it is important that you have the capability to turn um, a movement into a mass movement, and a mass movement not only in name, rather also in spirit. And Gandhi ji was successful in achieving this. Okay. Now, when we see the political foundation of Gandhi, so basically what we are trying to see is what are the political foundations of Gandhi. Okay, so he is claimed to be a saint. Okay, and he is also accepted by inner ones. Okay, as divine unity. Then we have morals, principles, truth, non-violence, non-stealing, non-possession, and celibacy. We will talk about these, which are the basic political foundation of Gandhi. But before we move to that section, there is one more thing that we need to have in mind. Let's have a look on the early upbringing of Gandhi. So when you will look at the early upbringing of Gandhi, you will see that Gandhi is basically born and brought up in a town which is Porbandar in Gujarat. Okay, and when you will have a look at the demographic area of this region, you will find that this region was dominated by traders, right? So people in this region were primarily traders. Okay. Apart from that, the major religion that was followed um, after Hinduism was, of course, Jainism, and therefore we see that a lot of impact is there on Gandhi, and one can argue that this impact, or let's say the seeds of non-violence, was implanted into Gandhi's heart basically when he was a kid, when he was a child essentially. And slowly, this was primarily because he was in an atmosphere where Jainism was prevalent. And we all are well aware with this fact that Jainism is one of the basic principles of Jainism is non-violence, right? So somehow we can see the backdrop of Gandhi early in his life, right? And similarly, when you look at his other aspects, you will see that the atmosphere, or let's say the family he was born into, was well affluent, and therefore this facilitated Gandhi into having access to higher education, in having access to several books, which was not common at that point for any general person, right? So that's one aspect that we talked about. Okay. Another thing, when we talk about Gandhi, you will find out that the very ideas that were used by Gandhi in India's freedom struggle were not experiment. Okay, the basic experiment was basically done in South Africa, and therefore we can see that now few people will debate that was coming of Gandhi, or let's say returning of Gandhi to India, a pre-planned thing, or was it facilitated by the leaders at that time? Okay, if so, mostly when you call someone from outside, okay, or let's say at that point there were several politicians who were, let's say, present at that time. Okay, now when they were present at that time, it is quite um, contrary to think that a lot of them would be willing to invite Gandhi. But it was so. Gandhi's return was indeed facilitated. Okay, so when it was facilitated, what is the common thing that we are seeing is that Gandhi was accepted not only in South Africa before coming to India, but also in India. Okay, because people are calling him back to India. Okay, so his acceptance was already there, and therefore the kind of movement that Gandhi took in South Africa, okay, already created a niche for
Sir,
Gandhi to return back.
can you repeat after his acceptance?
His acceptance.
Yes, sir, the part where he was coming back to India, so he was being accepted. I think we lost connection again.
See, what I am trying to say is कि जब गांधी साउथ अफ्रीका में है तो बेसिकली क्या हुआ कि यूजुअली तो हमको कोई बुलाता ही नहीं है ना, लेकिन जब गांधी वापस आ रहे हैं तो लोग उनको बुला रहे हैं। इस समय जो पॉलिटिकल लीडर्स हैं यहाँ पर, कहाँ पर, इंडिया में, वो गांधी को इनवाइट कर रहे हैं, और गांधी का इनविटेशन अपने आप में एक बैकड्रॉप है जिसमें हम लोग ये समझ सकते हैं कि गांधी वॉज वाइडली एक्सेप्टेड। ओके, सो गांधी को यहाँ आने के बाद आफ्टर रिटर्निंग टू इंडिया ही डिडंट हैव टू क्रिएट हिज निशे, या फिर he didn't have to create his followers, because initially you need some followers. So Gandhi's aura was already such, he was already accepted generally in Indian society, right? So this is one thing that we need to remember. Let's move ahead. Okay. Now, when we talk about Gandhi's political foundations, okay, now he has claimed, he himself claims that he is a saint. Okay, apart from this, so Gandhi is not saying that I am a politician. Gandhi is saying that I am a saint. Okay, although he is looked by others as a politician. So we'll come to this, and we will look in further slides that what actually Gandhi had to say on this stand. Okay, now when we see acceptance was by inner ones. Okay, and he is basically saying um, that when you accept, there is a kind of divine unity. Okay, so when we say divine unity, okay, I think I have shared the wrong slide. Anyways, so we will talk about this. Just give me a minute.
Thank you, sir.
Hello,
Yes, sir.
just give me a minute. Okay, I will share the right slide. Okay, actually I have shared the wrong slide today. Okay, there is another
Yeah,
slide
sure, sir.
which I should share.
Yes, sir. Actually, there was some connectivity issue on my end, sir. My modem restarted by itself.
Okay, not an issue. Can you see the screen? Is it visible to you?
Right now, I'm looking at Mahatma Gandhi sui generis.
Mahatma Gandhi. Some screen is shared.
Yes, sir. The one that was the third slide of Gandhi, saint, his claim, politician, his activities.
Just give me a minute. Cannot locate it. What can you look at now?
So still the same screen.
Anyways, so we can do one thing. Still not shared. Hello?
Yes, sir.
Not shared.
No, sir, not yet.
So basically, what you are seeing is a picture of me and something shared as Gandhi, right?
No, sir, just the screen, Mahatma Gandhi sui generis.
Okay. Anyways, so let me just continue. Okay. You can manage. So you are taking the notes, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you can manage it. So let's talk about what are the philosophical foundations for Gandhi or his political perspective. So when we talk about philosophical foundations of Gandhi, what we have seen is Gandhiji is deeply religious man. So when we say deeply religious, he is like involved into religion. Now, this idea of religion is basically shaping the kind of politics that Gandhiji is pursuing throughout his life. Okay, and apart from this, the his basic religious nature, okay, is also shaping the ideas that are prevalent throughout this time, okay, and it includes that um, his view of society that and his view of economic ideas, okay, are basically enforced uh, by the religious principles that we have. Okay, now what we are seeing is once Gandhiji wrote that most religious men that he met, okay, were politicians in disguise, right? So what Gandhiji is saying that most of the religious men that he met at that time were politicians, were actually politicians, right? So Gandhiji is actually saying that the saints that were present at that time were politicians, but he said that I am a politician in disguise, okay, but at heart I am a saint. So he's saying that actually I am a saint, okay, but I have a different presentation of mind, which is politician, right? And therefore he clarifies that his bent was not political but religious, right? So Gandhiji himself is clarifying that his bent is um, is not political, rather it is religious, right? So this is something that we need to keep in mind because this is the thought of Gandhi, and you can quote this that in Gandhiji's opinion, his bent was not political but religious, right? So this is Gandhiji's opinion. Now, so what is his? So therefore, it becomes quite important to understand his religious, let's say, ideas, and therefore we will be able to understand that how these religious ideas shape his political ideas, right? So basically, he is accepting the inner oneness of all the existence um, in the world, right? So he's saying that everything that is there, okay, in this world, basically all living things are united, okay, and as they are united in a cosmic spirit, okay. So he's saying that everything is eternally divine, right? And as everything is eternally divine, therefore the whole world, okay, is the reflection of men, of let's say of God, okay. So when the whole world is merely the reflection of God, then each and every man, woman, or any living thing is the reflection of God. And therefore, um, the ultimate aim of man was to realize this realization, right? So there is a realization in understanding this. So what is Mahatma Gandhi trying to say? He is saying that we all throughout the world are merely reflection of the God, but somehow men and women are not understanding it, and as they are not understanding it, there is an issue, right? And therefore, the primary motive, according to Mahatma Gandhi, is not any political pursuit, right? Rather, he is saying the primary motive of any man, of any woman, should be self-pursuit, okay, and that is self-realization, right? And therefore, what is important to understand is that the primary thing that Gandhiji is talking is self-realization, and according to him, self-realization meant being face to face to uh, to God. Now, when I say God, what Gandhiji refers to as God is truth, right? So he's saying that truth or God are not two different things. Rather, they are united, okay, or they are one. Because when everything that is ignorance, everything um, that is, let's say, not truth, or let's say everything which is a myth, okay, when such things are dispelled, the ultimate thing that is left is truth, right? So what Gandhiji is saying that self-realization means the realization of truth, okay, or the absolute truth, as one might say, okay, because when you understand absolute truth, there is nothing else left to be understood, okay, because everything apart from that becomes is nothing but a part of ignorance, right? And therefore, what Gandhiji is trying to say is that one for self-realization or one for the realization of truth does not need to understand the complete world. Rather, they need to understand themselves. So before trying to understand the complete world, it becomes quite important to understand oneself, right? And therefore, as each and every individual is a part of a cosmic spirit. So let's say I, you, or somebody else, these are not different people. Rather, they are all one. And as they are all one, okay, they are united together. So let's say if somebody else is in problem, okay, this will also affect me. And therefore, the involvement of Gandhiji into politics was nothing but attempt to achieve self-realization. Right? Did you get this point?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So what is he trying to say is that unless and until man is not able to identify himself with the whole of mankind, okay, there is no purpose, or there is no purpose of life, or let's say you cannot have self-realization. Okay, so you're not different from the world. Okay, or let's say an individual is not having a separate identity. Okay, rather he is let's say having a identity that goes on with mankind, or which is a common goal. And therefore, as all are one, therefore politics becomes a natural activity. Similarly, politics for Gandhiji is nothing but as an art, or is an excellent way to engage with the world, right? And as it is an excellent way to engage with the world, therefore it becomes a excellent way to let's say to have self-realization, and at the same time to have service to the mankind, right? So what he is saying is that you do not need to retreat to Himalayas, or to practice certain rituals to understand the world. Rather, to have self-realization, or to understand the world, or to understand the ultimate truth, engagement with this world is quite important. And therefore, Gandhiji is a saint and still engages with the world, okay, but his ultimate aim remains the same, that is self-realization of himself, okay, and at the same time to help others, or to help um, other individuals, men, women, whosoever they might be, okay, to achieve their self-realization, or to achieve to the absolute truth, or to realize the absolute truth. Okay. Therefore, to reflect on society, or to reflect on human nature, one does not need to retreat, rather one needs to actively participate in this world, and politics becomes one of the tools for this purpose, right? Which offers you both the things. One, the tool to understand the world, or to understand the truth, okay, and at the same time, a tool for the service of mankind. Okay, and therefore Gandhiji writes that man's ultimate aim is the realization of God, and all his activities, social, political, religious, have to be guided by the ultimate aim of the vision of God. The immediate service of all the human beings becomes a necessary part of the individual, simply because the only way to find God is to see himself in his creation and be one with it. He further writes that this can only be done by service of all. I am a part and parcel of the whole, and I cannot find him apart from the rest of the humanity. My countrymen are my nearest neighbors. They have become so helpless, so resourceless, and so inert that I must concentrate myself on serving them. If I could persuade myself that I should find him in the Himalayan caves, I would proceed there immediately. But I know that I cannot find him apart from humanity. Now, this is what Gandhiji is writing, right? So, one more thing that we need to understand over is here is he, when you will, Gandhiji was a master of many arts. Okay, so he was a journalist. Okay, he was so because he started numerous newspapers. Okay, he was a politician. He was religious. Okay, he involved himself into social works. Okay, apart from that, he was a good orator. Okay, you name an art. Okay, and Gandhiji was master in that. So simply, so let's say if the existence of Gandhi Or let's say if Gandhi would not have, let's say, been remembered as a great political figure, still he had several other, let's say, arenas where he would have been remembered, because he was one of the pioneers in changing the way, okay, in which newspapers functioned. Okay, he was also the pioneer, because then in that case, let's say if you are willing to forget Gandhi as politician, then you will have to acknowledge his other works. So you will have to acknowledge him as writer. You will have to acknowledge him as maybe as journalist, maybe as um, social worker, and so on, right? And even of course a saint. So what I'm essentially trying to say is, to understand Gandhi, we need to understand that what were his core principles. Okay, and therefore we are reading for these core principles. Because when Gandhiji is writing, or when Gandhiji is publishing his newspaper, he is not doing it with the spirit of a journalist. Rather, he is doing it with a purpose, that is to serve the mankind, to help people to realize the truth. Okay, and ultimately it becomes um, his tool. Okay, so his sole purpose remains the same. Okay, in helping, or let's say in serving humanity. And in this process, he has, of course, played a lot of roles. He has been the negotiators, he has been a diplomat, okay, and a lot more. Okay, as we will delve into it, you will find it out that he is a family man also, he is a saint also, okay, and he is an avid reader, okay, he remains a child, and so on. Okay, now, so moving further, what one more thing that we need to remember is that the only means for self purification, okay, is to pay attention on oneself. So Gandhi's primary way for self realization, or for reaching to the absolute truth, is to pay more focus on self purification, right? So what I am trying to say by self purification, or what Gandhiji meant by self purification, was not just practicing the rituals. Rather, he himself practiced certain rituals. Let's say he fasted a lot. Okay, so he used the fasting method. He used prayers, and then he used service. Okay, and he took all of these. Okay, he practiced all of these till his end, till he dies. So you cannot argue that once Gandhiji is getting favorable conditions, he is changing his face. No, he remains one. And therefore, one can argue that what Gandhiji said, or what Gandhiji wrote, was essentially true. Okay, and therefore, there are several writers throughout the globe who blame Gandhiji for a lot of things, but nobody blames Gandhi for ever speaking a lie. Okay, so whatsoever is written by Gandhiji, let's say in his My Experiments with Truth, and several other volumes. So when you will read Gandhiji's collective works, it's there in more than 100 volumes. So what I'm trying to emphasize is that all the tools that Gandhiji is doing is essentially dedicated towards self-realization, because he never fluctuates. Once he is saying that I will use this, or once he takes a vow, he is never going to break it. Okay, so that's the power of Gandhi, which is important. Similarly, Gandhiji says that self-realization is required, or let's say self-realization will come to you only after self-purification. And therefore, this self-realization or self-purification becomes the ethical ground on which Gandhian philosophy rests. Right? So basic Gandhian philosophy is not a philosophy for the society, rather it is philosophy for an individual, and it is built over the philosophy for individual, and slowly into a great philosophy for complete mankind. So whenever Gandhiji is talking about mankind, so Gandhiji is talking about the kind of economic setup one should practice. He's talking about the kind of political setup that we should have. He's talking about the language one should use in India, okay, and so on. But in all of these, Gandhiji is essentially saying that one should first focus on self-realization, right? So the ethical principle that Gandhiji uses in politics is is the ethical principles inherent into several other philosophies, and therefore we see that several of his ethical principles are borrowed from Buddhism, are borrowed from Jainism, and so on. right? So ultimately, the backbone of Gandhi's political thought is the ethical principles or is the ethical outlook. And therefore, if you will remove this ethical outlook from Gandhian philosophy, nothing left, nothing is left over, right? So every backbone, or let's say the very piece that on which Gandhian philosophy stands, is the ethical outlook. And therefore, Gandhi himself, being the epitome of uh, of ethical principles, which he practices till end, okay, um, always keeps on emphasizing this and never breaks it, right? So, therefore, Gandhiji has provided us or has given us five-fold moral principles, which are the backbone of Gandhi's political philosophy. And these five moral principles are Satya, Ahimsa, Asteya, Aparigrah, or Brahmacharya. So, these are five basic principles: Satya, Ahimsa, Asteya, Aparigrah, and Brahmacharya. Satya is truth. So what essentially he is saying is that one should always speak truth, no matter what, and one should always be truthful, no matter what. No, when I say no matter what I am trying to say is that your truth should not be only to others. So let's say if you practice that I will never say a lie to anyone else. So let's say you take a vow to speak truth always, okay. But still, if you there can be certain instances where you do not need, or let's say there can be certain instances where you're not truthful to yourself, right? Let's take an example how this can be possible. Let's say that when you will read Gandhiji's autobiography, you will find out that on several instances he had mentioned several things which would not have been known to uh, people in general if Gandhiji would not have written it in his autobiography. Let's say he talks about stealing watch and then placing it back. Okay. He talks about visiting a prostitute. Okay, and then doing nothing and returning back. Okay, so if such things would not have been written, nobody would have known that Gandhiji ever attempted this. Okay, right? But still, Gandhiji is writing it because what he is trying to say is because when you are writing autobiography, what he has done is that he has presented everything as it is before the world, and therefore he is saying that unless and until you're not truthful to yourself, okay, any kind of truth is not important. And we might be seeing these things um, a lot. Let's say that what kids do usually. So let's say you a kid hears the knock on the door, and then he picks up his book and starts reading, right? So when he starts reading, did he say anything which was a lie? No. So if father enters into the room, what will he see? He will see that the kid is reading. There is nothing wrong in it. He just got a cue that he should read, and he started reading. Okay. So the child in this sense said no lie, but still his actions were not truthful because he was not being truthful to himself. I guess you must be getting this. That what I'm trying to say is because when you are alone or when a man is alone, that's the crucial time when his personality comes out as it is, right? So when someone is completely alone, he becomes exactly what he is. He stops pretending, and at that time, one needs to be truthful. Okay, so Gandhi's um, idea of truth is not merely speaking truth, rather, it is to stick to the vows that one has taken and then to imbibe truthfulness into inner self, right? So that is one part. Next comes ahimsa, which is non-violence. So when we talk about non-violence, again, Gandhiji's rationale of non-violence, it is not just that we should not use arms, okay? Rather, it is that we should not even think in violent terms about somebody else, right? So that is one more thing. We will again discuss non-violence in detail. Similarly, we have non-stealing, non-possession, and celibacy. Now these things are quite easy to understand, because non-possession does not mean that you will not have anything. Rather, it implies that you will not collect anything. Okay, so he's saying that you will take only that portion which is sufficient for you. Let's say that you need only one car, okay, or let's say you need just one vehicle, so you will just use one vehicle. There is no purpose in having 10 vehicles, okay, because they are not required. Similarly, what we have seen is that we keep on hoarding things with us, right? So that is what he is trying to say, is that you should have certain possessions, but those possessions just merely be for your purpose, which should solve your purpose. Let's say you are having 10 watches. Now, purpose of having 10 watches is nothing, okay, because you will use only one watch, okay, at a time, right? So one watch will solve the purpose. So let's say the purpose of having nine others is nothing. Okay. So that's the idea which is there. And then we have celibacy. Again, when we talk about celibacy or brahmacharya, it is not only resistance from indulgence into sexual activity. Rather, it is also resistance from having a mental thinking related to sexual activity, right? So that's the idea which is there. Now, apart from this, what we need to discuss here is that what actually Gandhiji was thinking when it comes to, let's say, human nature, right? Okay, as you're not able to see this, okay, I'm just going to stop the share, okay, or let's say end the share. Fine. Now I'm visible, right? Okay,
Yes, sir.
right. Now, can you see something else? Can you see the screen?
No, sir.
Can you see me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. So let's proceed ahead from here. So next, what we need to talk about is the human nature, right? So what is the human nature, which was the belief of Mahatma Gandhi? So we have already talked about it in earlier, but still we will see it once more. So Gandhiji's view about man, or about human nature or society, was always in in coordination with his ethical or principles, or let's say with morality, right? So what he is trying to say is that no matter what is the nature of humans, it is the primary goal, or let's say it is the primary moving force for us to remain ethical. Okay, so he's saying that no one is perfect, right? So Gandhiji's um, vision about human nature is the one where he is saying that no one is perfect. And therefore, if you can recall Gandhiji's quote, he himself says that to err is human, or to do mistakes is a human. And therefore, what he is saying is that although each and everyone should be guided by morality, okay, or let's say each and everyone should be guided by ethical principles, but still man has certain imperfections, and he will always be so. No matter what, one strives to perfection, one will never reach perfection. But this does not mean that one should not strive for perfection, right? So he's saying that although he is aware that men are made up of imperfections, but still one should try for perfection, right? So there is no one without faults, not even men of God, right? There are men of God not because they are faultless, but because they know their own faults. Now these are the readings that I am reading from Mahatma Gandhi, right? So what he is saying is that there is no one without faults. Rather, um, there are, so let's say we talk about men of God. So let's say there is a priest, there is a um, father in church. So these are men of God. But even these people are not without faults, right? So what he writes is that they are men of God not because they are faultless, but because they know their own faults. And by this definition, everyone who is striving for self-realization will ultimately get to know that they do have certain faults. And as they will get to know that they do have certain faults, they will become men of God. Because men of God according to Gandhiji's definition, is nothing but a realization that we have certain faults. So as soon as man realizes his weakness as an individual, as a member of group, or let's say even when he is in the society, or even when he is all alone, in all the circumstances, as soon as man realizes his weakness, it becomes his moral obligation to try to rectify it, right? So what he's trying to see or say is that no matter what kind of man someone is, one can be extremely violent, but when it comes to themselves, one will move towards inviolence, right? And therefore what he is saying is that no matter what, or no matter how bad a person is, okay, or no matter how ethically broken a person is, or no matter how stone-hearted a person is, okay, but there is always a potential for goodness in him. And therefore, when treating with others who are violent to us or who are imperfect, we should not look only on their imperfections. Rather, we should try to look on their other pictures, or let's say we should try to look on their goodness, or we should try to look on certain things which are good in them. Now, when you will do this, okay, you will also show a mirror to the different person that he has certain goodness. And as one will realize that he has certain goodness, there is a potential to for him to transform. Because unless and until you do not believe, or unless and until you do not realize that something good is inherent in you, the possibility of it coming to the surface, the possibility of it being played in daily life roles becomes remote. And therefore, when dealing with any of the persons, what Gandhiji does is that he never treats a person as somebody with imperfection. Rather, he always treats everyone with a friendly action. And therefore, Gandhiji again writes, and I will read it from his writings, that there are chords in every human heart. If we only know how to strike the right chord, we bring out the music. Okay. So what Gandhiji is essentially writing is that we have that there are chords in every human heart. So basically, he is saying that each and every human being is somehow good at the heart. And as he is good at heart, if you will strike at the right chord, you will bring out the music. So basically, you will transform the person, right? So somebody might be superficially, somebody might be looking that they are not good, but there is always a potential to invoke goodness in them, right? And therefore, again, he at another place he writes it, okay, and I will read one more of his reading, okay, just give me a minute. Again, right. So again, he writes that we were born with brute strength. We were born with brute strength, but we were born in order to realize God who dwells in us. Right? So we are born with brute strength means that brute strength is like something which is not controlled, okay, or something which is there, which is potential is there. But we were born in order to realize God who dwells in us. Okay. So what he is basically trying to say is that okay, even if you are violent, okay, once you realize goodness in yourself, you realize God. Okay. And therefore, Gandhiji is giving each and everyone a privilege, okay, that they should consider a kind of um, change of heart. And for this, he is not forcing anyone, right? So he is saying that man essentially has certain features of an animal. Therefore, he is a violent. Okay. So as a man, somebody is violent. But when you will look in his core, okay, he becomes non-violent. So he's saying that man as an animal, okay, is a violent animal, but as a spirit, okay, so what is the spirit now? Okay, the spirit is nothing but when see we talk about the spirit, we talk about Atma and all, but we never realize it. Okay, so it is even though we talk about it, for us it is still something which is non-existent. But as soon as you realize it, okay, you will realize its nature. And Gandhiji is saying that man's spirit is non-violent by nature, right? So what we essentially conclude from this is that Gandhiji's self-realization is the realization of the spirit which is inherent into every man's nature, and Gandhiji is saying both that man by nature, okay, by nature means as he is an animal, okay, he is violent, but again at the same time, by the nature of his spirit, he is non-violent. So there are two aspects of Gandhiji's comment on nature of humans. Okay, so he's saying that for the time being, when man identifies himself as a body, okay, or simply is indulged into material aspects, he behaves as animal. Okay, and as he behaves as animal, he remains violent. Okay, but as soon as he strives for self-realization, and once he realizes that he is a spirit, or once he touches the surface even of the truth, he realizes his own spirit and becomes non-violent, right? So Gandhiji is saying that there is potential for both, and in crux, it is saying that there is potential for both, for having godliness and then to behave as animals, right? So to remain violent and then to remain non-violent. Okay. Now, apart from this, Gandhiji is also saying that no matter what, okay, no matter how much you remain indulged into materialism, the ultimate nature of human beings is trying to achieve self-realization, because nobody is ever satisfied. Nobody is ever satisfied, because nobody is ever satisfied. It is hinting us to something, that man is incomplete, and as man is incomplete, what he is trying to find out is to have something which can, let's say, um, outshine himself, right? So let's say when you are trying to buy a car, what you are trying to do is you are trying to add something to yourself, and then to exert your power, or to, let's say, to exert your influence, or to broaden your influence, or let's say to broaden your position in the society. So what man essentially is trying to seek is more and more of what? More of anything that comes to his mind, right? So this striving of having more, having more, having more, and then never achieving it is an indication that it cannot be met by having material gains. Then how it can be met? Then he is saying that this is also an indication, this attitude of men to have more and more is also an indication that man somehow is trying to expand, okay, and is somehow trying to know his complete potential. And therefore is saying that man, no matter what, whether he indulges into a material life or whether he becomes a saint, is essentially seeking the same thing, which is self-realization. And therefore Gandhiji's comment on human nature is essentially this, that man by nature is a organism which is devoted to self-realization, right? And therefore, when we assume that man is devoted to self-realization, so let's say somebody is trying to achieve more and more wealth. So what he's trying to see is that how much capable is he in earning it. So let's say somebody is reading hard to achieve greater position in the society. Again, he is trying to find out how much potential he has to to, let's say, crack an exam, or let's say to have greater respect in the society, right? So Gandhiji is saying that these are moral qualities, okay, and there are certain social virtues also which are present in man. So these moral qualities are like love, cooperation, like tolerance to others, okay. So over what? Over other similar activities. So when we talk about of love, opposite to it we have hatred. When we talk about cooperation, opposite to it we have selfishness. When we talk about tolerance, opposite to it you have intolerance, right? So all of these things are there in the society, and as man moves ahead, he simply strives to be good, because everybody wants to be good. Nobody wants to be seen in a bad light. which is again an indication that man by nature is inclined to goodness, or let's say is always struggling to be good, to be better, to be the best. Okay, in no matter what path he chooses, right? So, in essence, what Gandhiji is speaking is that human nature is um, is essentially uh, a urge in human beings to reach the highest development or to reach the highest possible level. Okay, so again, I will quote from Gandhiji. Okay, and this will be the final quote. And I will recommend you to write these because you can use these quotes and answers. Just have this quote. Okay, write this. The soul is one and all. Its possibility is therefore the same for everyone. It is this undoubted universal possibility that distinguishes the human from the rest of God's creation. Right? So it is this undoubted universal possibility that distinguishes the man from the rest of God's creation. Right? So what he is saying is that a man has a soul, okay, and this soul is not different, rather it is one. Okay, so each and every one is connected in some kind of cosmic spirit, and there is a possibility, okay, for each and every one to have uh, a distinct um, nature, okay, or to have or to achieve self-realization. And as soon as we will achieve self-realization, we will achieve the truth, and we will understand that we are nothing but a part of of God's creation, and we will all come to harmony. All of us achieve this ultimate truth, we will come to harmony, right? Okay. Now let's talk about relationship between religion and politics. So what is the relationship between religion and politics according to Gandhi? Although we have hinted towards it in the starting of the discussion, we will again take this up in detail. Right. So when we talk about modern world, what we have seen is that religion and political activities are different, and this was not always the case. Okay. So when you will remember, most of the time when we talk about ancient India, we talk a lot about religion, and therefore religion and politics were interconnected in India at least. Okay, and therefore, Gandhiji is himself questioning about what is religion or what is the sense of religion. And therefore, if you will see, so for Gandhiji, he always emphasized on one particular thing, that all the religions had some fundamental truth which were there throughout. So let's say when you will look at the crux of all the religion, or when you will find out that what is the crux of all the religion, you will find out that each and every religion is essentially hinting towards a common source, okay, which can be the God, and then essentially he is each and every religion is also asking men to be more cooperative, to be um, to be in harmony with the nature, and let's say to practice non-violent activities, or to be non-violent, to speak truth. Okay, so all the religions are essentially talking the same, and therefore Gandhiji is saying that we might be looking at different religions in different way, but all the religions of the world, no matter which religion it is, no matter by it is practiced by how many people, okay, or how popular it is, okay, essentially all the religions are trying to help each other and ultimately are pointing to the same thing, right? And apart from this, he is also saying that each
Sir,
and yeah,
the last part you said that every religion is trying to help the other religions in the world.
yeah.
So this is one of the basic teachings of Jainism.
I do not know about this. That
No,
What Jainism is talking about other religions.
no. Actually, told me yesterday to read about justice in Jainism and Buddhism, right?
Yeah,
So there was one article by some doctor, and she quoted that to understand the concept of justice in Jainism, we need to understand the practices of Jainism. And there was this thing that a quote she said about Jainism was that Jainism says in order for all the religions to exist and grow in this world, we all need to support each other. Thus, Jainism suggests that we only grow as we support the other religions. So, could it be that Gandhi ji was also influenced by Jainism a lot?
See,
Because the teachings
we
of
have already talked about this in the starting of the lecture, right? So we have already talked that Gandhiji was indeed influenced by the Jainism, right? So and
Mhm.
therefore it was not merely because he read it, but also because he was born and brought up in the area where Jainism was basically practiced a lot or was basically flourishing, right? So
Yes, sir.
basically, when you will look at this demography of Gujarat in at that time, you will find out that Jainism was prevalent at that time. Right? Still, the main area, Mount Abu, okay, which relates with Jainism, is still in Rajasthan, right? So those
Yes, sir.
areas where it was prevalent um, in that area, and therefore you can still argue that this principle or this ideology of Gandhiji was somehow influenced by Jainism. That is right. Okay, that is not in conflict with that
Yes, sir. And
because yeah,
also found a lot of similarities between Buddhism and Jainism.
yeah
Uh,
they are.
the concept of justice is somewhat similar or almost same in both of these.
Yeah, you will also find out that not only Jainism and Buddhism, rather you will also find out that they are similar in almost all the religions. It is not only in Jainism and Buddhism, rather they are similar in all the religions. Okay, and as we have talked about Buddhism, we have seen that somehow Buddhism was nothing but an attempt to revive the ancient Vedic traditions, right? Because by the later Vedic era, things were emphasized more on rituals. So rituals were more emphasized, and the complete ideology or the philosophy of the religion was lost. And somehow Buddhism was an attempt to restore to those philosophies, right? And again, you will see that the practice of Jainism can also be regarded as it because several Tirthankars of uh, Jainism are also mentioned in Vedas, right? So there are mentioning of several Tirthankars in Vedas. Okay, I'm not talking about Mahavir, but I'm talking about the previous one. So Jainism existed even in ancient times, right? And the present format of Jainism is somehow which was established by Mahavir, right? So we are moving ahead from here.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So what Gandhiji is essentially saying is that for each one of us, okay, religion basically works on the principle of fundamental ethics. Okay, and religion enables us to pursue truth and righteousness. Okay, and apart from that, he is also emphasizing that religion in general and religion in a specific sense are quite different things. Okay, one can belong to a specific religion with a certain beliefs and practices, right? And as one moves throughout the life, okay, so let's say if you start moving through a certain path, okay, which is suggested by a religion, okay, and if it is limiting you, you will try to transcend it, and it happens with all of us. So you might have seen that certain people who claim that they belong to a certain religion do practice certain activities which are prohibited in that religion. Okay, so what he is trying to say is that even though you are practicing religion, okay, but at the same time you're also trying to create certain changes in that, right? And therefore the common thread which is there present throughout all the religions or throughout all the rituals is the attempt to have truth. Because ultimately, if somehow any of the religion tries to um, tries to, let's say, narrow the boundaries, then the general nature of human beings will overcome that. Okay, And therefore, Gandhiji is not someone who is driven by the religion. Rather, he says that he is driven by ethics, right? And therefore, what he says is that although he regards that I am Hindu, okay, so he will speak that I am Hindu, but he is not someone who is having direct, um, let's say, uh, so let's say I'm saying कि I'm a Hindu, but at the same time I'm not conflicting the other religions. And therefore, what Gandhiji is saying is that religion is which transcends it. Okay, and therefore, being a Hindu does not mean that he is not inclined to other religions, or he is not going to read other religions, and therefore he reads text from Jainism, text from Buddhism, text even from Christianity and other religions, right? Fine. Okay,
Yes, sir.
that's it, Shubhank. I will end this discussion on religion over here. Okay, and then from tomorrow we will move on to politics, right? But before I end this discussion, I will read a document on religion by Gandhiji, right? So let's see what Gandhiji has had to say when it comes to religion. So I will just read this document, and then I will share you by the end of the lecture. Okay, so let's say by tomorrow evening or by the end of the lecture. So let's say it's just Gandhi's political thought will run for 3 lectures. Uh, So I will like compile everything up, the quotes that I have used, and I will send them to you. So even if you are not writing, this will be okay. Okay. So I'm just going to read what Gandhiji had to say on religion. So Gandhiji said, "Let me explain what I mean by religion. It is not the Hindu religion, which I certainly prize over all the religions, but the religion which transcends Hinduism, which changes one's very nature, which binds one indissolubly to the truth within, and whichever purifies." So basically, he is saying that ultimately, one, or let's say even he is claiming to be Hindu, but he is saying that he is bound by a religion which transcends Hinduism and is dependent on the human nature, or which is seeking the truth, or which purifies the soul, or which is moved by, or which is driven by self-realization. He further writes, "It is the permanent element in human nature which counts no cost too great in order to find full expression, and which leaves the soul utterly restless until it has found itself, knows its marker, and appreciates the true correspondence between the maker and itself." So what he is saying is that the aim of religion is to identify basically God, who is the maker of humankind, and therefore all the religion is nothing but it is an element in human nature. Okay, so it is saying. So I will again read that particular line, that it is the permanent element in human nature which counts no cost too great in order to find full expression, and which leaves the soul utterly restless until it has found itself known, it has found itself, its makers, and appreciates the true correspondence between the maker and itself. So ultimately, he is trying to say is that there is an element in human nature which tries to find out that who is the creator of the human beings, and in this process, um, unless and until the man is not connected, or unless and until the man is not connecting with this creator, this nature of human being keeps him unsettled, and therefore it becomes a constant um, question in our minds that who created us. Okay, and therefore Gandhiji is saying that as religion is a human nature, it does not belong to any sect, and therefore Gandhiji is against the sectarianism. Okay, so when I say sectarianism, he is saying that different religions at present time behave as different sects, okay, or as different sections of the society, and therefore these sectarianism should not develop. Okay, so Gandhiji is against sectarianism, right? Fine.
Yes, sir.
So that's it. This is what was there, which is here. So ultimately, I would add one more thing which I have missed out, that for Gandhiji, no religion is superior or inferior. Okay, and therefore he is saying that when a religion claims itself to be superior to other religion, okay, then one must suspect this particular clause. Okay, or let's say one must suspect such religions which claim superiority of one over the other. Right? Fine. That's it.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any questions so far?
No, sir, none yet.
Okay. Fine then. We will continue our discussion again tomorrow. Shubham, will it be possible for you to attend these lectures in the morning or during the daytime?
So around what timing would it be?
Around, I will just check it out. Just tell me if it is possible or not possible.
So right now I'm studying at night. So if you want to take the classes in the morning, then can you give me a day or two to reschedule my sleeping
No.
pattern so that I can wake up in the
If I
morning?
will take this class, it will be hopefully post afternoon. So let's say it will be somewhere between 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. or after 3 p.m., 3 to 4 p.m., something like that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That is fine by me.
Yeah, I'm not talking about early morning. Okay, so even if you are practicing or let's say reading at night, you will have ample time to sleep and then wake up, right? So tomorrow I will plan it up and then I will let you know the timing. So tomorrow it
Yes,
will
sir.
be it will be at the same time at 8 p.m. in the night, and then we will change it in due course of time. So we will take 1 or 2 days to change it. Fine.
Sure, sir. Yes.
Okay. Um, so today we basically we are not having the slide, and I will be uploading the slide in a course over the website. So if you will require anything, okay, let's say related to these classes, even these classes will have recorded classes will be there on the course. Okay, so you can enroll in that particular course. Just register yourself over there, and then you can have access to these classes and then the text that we are using. Apart from that, I will be also uploading the questions which you need, or let's say the some practice questions, so that you can attempt writing answers over there, right? And once you are done with the writing of these answers, you can submit these answers again using the same portal, okay, so that it can be reviewed by the teachers over here, right? So there is a
Yes, sir.
functionality for answer right checking, and there is a detailed guide for it. Okay, that how you should use or how you should upload it, or and where to send it. Just refer to that detailed guide. I will float that over the website in a day or two. Okay, so in a day or two you can answer. You can start writing answers. Okay,
Yes, sir.
okay. Fine, Shubham. So I'm going to end this session for the day, and we will resume with this discussion tomorrow. Okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Have a nice day. Take care.